PSYCHO-PICTOGRAPHY by Vernon Howard, Chapter 2. It is said that the best things in life are free. They are. That is why a man must stop trying to pay for them with anxious effort and unnatural strain. Some wise individuals realize that hard work all by itself is no virtue. They are the alert ones. They see the difference between anxious striving and natural coasting. Anxious effort gives you nothing for something. Natural effort harmonized with the natural laws of life, gives you something for nothing. One task of psychopictography is to show you that the easy way is the right way. It does not appeal to an unrealistic desire to get something for nothing. It tries to show every man that he inwardly possesses everything he needs, but does not consciously know it. You need not strive to create contentment or energy or friendships or anything else. You need only to claim them. You need not struggle. You need only realize your lamp is already lighted and you need only to remove its covering. Writes philosopher Meher Baba, it must be impressed constantly upon humanity that the real birthright of every man and woman is to achieve his own original freedom, that it can be achieved, and that sooner or later it must be achieved. Without this, there is no lasting escape from the day-to-day problems. Suppose you knew that a map to a fabulous treasure had been taken to a mountain peak, torn and scattered to the four winds. You would, of course, search for the pieces, but would you strain anxiously at every step, or would you enjoy the adventure? Would you be gloomy, or would you step cheerfully around? Knowing that the treasure can be found, you would be excited, but at the same time relaxed. Your treasures of contentment and energy and everything else are yours to find. That is what this chapter, in fact, the entire book, is all about. Making your mind your best friend. Throughout these pages, we will be meeting terms such as awareness, understanding, perception of truth, higher levels of consciousness, and other similar terms. It is important to define them. For maximum clarity, I will phrase the definition in 3 different ways. Simply remember that they all mean the same thing. Awareness, or understanding, or perception of truth means to see something new, something we have never inwardly grasped up to now, or to so understand an idea that it is no longer intellectual knowledge but an internally operating fact, or to actually see a false attitude or viewpoint as false and a truthful viewpoint as truthful. When we were children, we had certain attitudes toward life. For example, that our parents should buy us every toy in the store window. As our understanding developed, that unrealistic attitude was replaced by genuine understanding. We were therefore free from a frustrating demand for toys. That is a simple example of the difference between a mere attitude and a mature understanding. Let's take another misunderstanding, common to many people, relating to the mind. People do not realize that the mind can actually be transformed into something entirely different from a mechanically reacting machine. What may now be a man's worst enemy can be amazingly changed into a man's best friend. The very mind that may now be confused or angry or frustrated can be turned into something clear, creative, cheery, unafraid. Misunderstanding is like a loosely built brick wall. Remove a key brick or two and the whole false structure collapses, enabling you to see beyond to a previously unknown empire. Sometimes a simple statement of truth is enough to crack open a new world of awareness. I once asked a troubled man, "Did it ever occur to you that life might be good and that you simply do not see it?" He later reported, "That was like switching on a light bulb that had been out for years." One of the greatest contributions of psychopictography is a new understanding. A positive mental picture attacks and destroys illusions and irritating imaginations. If we are personally to find this wonderful new life, a new understanding is essential. We must discover who we really are, what we can actually do for ourselves, how we can change and brighten what we may now consider hopeless. The first heroic step towards self-knowledge is the quiet admission that we presently do not know ourselves very well. Self-honesty is self-power. Armed with it, we can dash courageously into the adventure of self-discovery, certain of victory. Try this for an encouraging truth. No sincere effort towards self-understanding is ever lost. It remains as an energizing force. This is such an inspiring idea that I want to repeat it. Once glimpsed, a new truth can never be lost. Knowledge comes, but wisdom lingers. Alfred Lord Tennyson. It is like viewing a spacious, beautiful countryside as you pass in your car. Once seen, it can never be unseen. Whether you are consciously aware of it or not, it remains to guide and inspire. Picture yourself standing in a long, dark hall with dozens of windows covered by drapes. You pull aside one of the drapes to gain a bit of light as well as a first glimpse of the lovely world outside. You uncover a second window to have even more light and land. You pull aside more and more drapes, permitting additional clarity and perception. That illustrates the positive pleasure of awareness, of inner perception. Work to gain more. Understanding is the golden touch that transforms you and your world. Understanding has a very distinct feeling. It is a unique process. It changes you, internally and outwardly, into the kind of person you want to be. How to achieve natural happiness. I would like, said Morton H., a clear picture of the change from unhappiness to happiness. Can you give us an example of how we reclaim our happy true self? It is the lightening of inner loads you are now unconsciously carrying around. Most people are not aware of all the useless burdens that wear them down, like negative emotions and fearful imaginations and frozen attitudes. As you become conscious of these pointless burdens, you drop them. Remember, no man consciously or knowingly burdens himself. He doesn't see what he's doing to himself. I have a glimpse of that, commented Morton. I once saw the folly of always rushing around, of inventing useless activities just to keep my mind distracted. I saw that I wasn't rushing toward anything, but rather away from my unhappy self. Now I've learned to like my own company. But you said that we must lighten these negative loads. Yes, picture it like this. You are flying in an airplane carrying excessive cargo. It wobbles, stalls, dips dangerously toward Earth, You looked into the problem. You see that the danger is not in the natural power of the plane, but in the unwise overloading. So you drop a few crates. The airplane rises, becomes a bit steadier. You drop more crates. The craft responds by rising higher and flying smoother. Finally, you rid it of all unwise cargo. Now you have a swift and safe flight. That is what we can do for our own natural happiness. We can lighten ourselves. We must become aware of our totally unnecessary loads of negativity. As we do, we toss them overboard. No man knowingly burdens himself. Then we soar freely and securely. The authors of Zen Buddhism and psychoanalysis express the same idea like this. To become conscious of the unconscious means to overcome repressedness and alienation from myself and hence from the stranger. It means to wake up, to shed illusions, fictions and lies, to see reality as it is. The man who wakes up is the liberated man, the man whose freedom cannot be restricted either by others or by himself. The process of becoming aware of that which one was not aware of constitutes the inner revolution of man. It is the true awakening which is at the root of both creative intellectual thought and intuitive immediate grasps. Recognizing your true self versus your false self. It is essential to understand that everyone has both a true self and a false self. Nothing is more important to investigate and to understand than this. The stronger the true self, the happier and more productive the man in every department of life. To the degree that the false self dominates, to that same extent a man is frustrated, the more he feels life empty and futile. The true self is the essential you. It is entirely free of all negative emotions, such as panic and despair. You were born with a true self. It is the real you. It can never be lost, though it may be presently dominated by the false self. The false self is the cause of every trouble you have. You must try to see this. When you do see it, you will never again blame yourself or anyone else for anything that happens, because you are no longer identified with the false self. That is, because you no longer take it as you. You simply see that it acted unwisely or angrily or even foolishly. The false self is merely your acquired attitudes and beliefs. It is not the real you. The false self has been called by many names. The New Testament refers it as the old nature. A modern psychologist would call it the negatively conditioned self. When we say that someone acts egotistically, we are referring to a feature of the false self. All mental, emotional, and physical action springing from the false self does damage. All action arising from the true self enriches you. Question: how does all this connect with personal happiness? Answer: the entire process of becoming happy consists in gradually weakening the false self so that the true self regains its rightful position in your life. The false self is always unhappy. The true self is never anything but happy. Back in 1904, a scientist named A.V.L. Vernon invented synthetic rubies. They were so similar to natural rubies that they nearly knocked the bottom out of the market for the natural gems. Nobody could tell the difference. The world of commercial rubies was thrown into panic and confusion. Finally, some gem experts took their instruments and went to work on the synthetic stones. They made an interesting discovery. Deep down inside the man-made gems were some defects consisting of tiny bubbles. They broadcast their discovery. Instantly, the price of natural rubies soared to its original high mark. Now that it was possible to tell the difference between the artificial and the real, no one wanted the false gems. Everyone desired the real, the natural, the genuinely valuable rubies. That is how we can go at it. We can take courage to look deeply inside ourselves. Then we will see the difference between our real and our artificial personalities. Once we see it, once we really see it, we no longer value false ideas or attitudes. We want only the valuable emotions, the enriching thoughts, the beneficial interests, and peaceful desires. Remember, it is awareness of the difference between the two that gets us on the right track. You now possess both the intelligence and the inclination to liberate yourself from the bondage of the false self. Even if you have doubts, you need not fear them. Even if you feel helpless, you need not hesitate. Even if you don't know what to do, you need not despair. Your true self always knows just what to do, even when you don't. Why not listen when it speaks? Why, it's true that you lack nothing. You lack nothing. Everything you need for a rich and abundant life is already supplied. You have them now. These ideas given by me at a lecture produced the following question from a man with a puzzled frown. But if we have everything we need, why don't we experience them in a practical way? Take our energies. Why do I tire so easily? Not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. It's not just me. Almost everyone complains of weariness. You say that we lack nothing. I don't understand. Will you please explain? The only valid tiredness is that normal physical weariness you have after working hard. All else is totally unnecessary. When you experience normal physical tiredness, bedtime is welcome, but not so with emotional fatigue. Facing bedtime is a nightly nightmare with millions of emotionally worn-out people. That's because they know they face another sleepless night. But what about all this rich energy? How can we experience it in our daily affairs? First, by being aware of how you yourself waste your natural supply. Then, by knowing how to stop it. How do we waste ourselves? With negative emotions. You get up in the morning with a fresh supply of strength. Then you get upset over a spilled cup of coffee. Already you have lost vital power. Later, you angrily reflect on how badly someone treated you. More loss. That evening you worry over a domestic problem, and so it goes. One negative feeling after another, each draining away your strength and good humour. No wonder you're tired. How can we stop exhausting ourselves? How to stop tiring yourself needlessly? By thinking in a new way toward everything that happens, and I mean everything. Remember, regardless of what happens, you need not respond with life-robbing emotions. A principal aim of our meetings is to retrain the mind so that it thinks in a new way. When this happens, natural energies are retained for constructive purposes. Strength and energy are but two examples of something for nothing. You have no lack of energy whatsoever. You can experiment heroically with this truth by refusing to go along with the temptation to become negative. Try it. Just try it. You will delightfully discover that you really have the strength to refuse to lose your strength. Speaking of a man with such wise heroism, author Colin Wilson writes, he comes to recognise that energy-stealing emotions, all the emotions that do not make for inwardness, and he sets out to exterminate them in himself. As he moves toward his objective, he increases steadily his supply of surplus vital power, and so increases his powers of foresight and hindsight. There is a breaking free of the body's sense of imprisonment in time and raising warmth of life energy that is spoken of in the gospel as to have life more abundantly. You are a mental millionaire. At this point, I want to give you one of the most amazing of all mental pictures. This section should receive extra attention as you review this book. Give its ideas time to work. You will then discover that you are really a mental millionaire. Picture a man standing outside a bank. In his conversations with other people, he remarks that he has $1 million on deposit in the bank, but he really doesn't believe it. He is merely trying to convince himself and others that he is a millionaire. Next, picture that man stepping inside the bank to transact some small business. To his surprise and joy, he is told that he actually has $1 million in his account. It is an inheritance that he had carelessly ignored for many years. He discovers that he really is the very millionaire he pretended to be. That is man's strange position in the world. He pretends that he is happy or wise or peaceful, but secretly feels that it is all a fake. But here is one of the most delightfully startling thoughts you will ever meet. Every man really is a mental millionaire. He really does possess happiness and wisdom and peace. But he never knows it as a personal experience because he indulges in the utterly fantastic act of pretending to be something that he really is. This makes clear the need for dropping all pretenses in order to find the true self. People are afraid to stop pretending because they fear that behind it lies only emptiness. But behind it lies richness, the real kind. The situation can also be compared with a beautiful woman who wears a beautiful mask because she doesn't realise that she herself is really beautiful. If she took courage enough to drop the mask, she would find her lovely true self. Every woman is beautiful, if she only knew it. Every man is a mental millionaire, if only he would stop pretending and start claiming. The point of it all. Asked someone, why do we fail to make this claim? Because you think that pretense is all you have, all that exists. You mistakenly assume that you would be impoverished without it. But you can change. You can think and see differently. Get emotionally aggressive against these pretenses that cheat you out of the real thing. Rebel against your own stage acting. Claim your true self now. Then you will see that you really are a mental millionaire and were one all along. I want to break into the text of this book to talk personally for a moment with you, the reader. Perhaps, as you have read along, a certain question has arisen in your mind. Many people ask this particular question in letters and at meetings. I'd like to discuss it with you. It goes like this. Mr. Howard, I'm sometimes confused about my purpose in studying these ideas. Why am I working at self-understanding, at changing my attitudes, at dropping my false beliefs? What is the value? Why should I work? Why persist? In other words, what is the point of it all? The point is very simple. In fact, it is so simple that many people miss it. The point is to live the way you really want to live. You want a brighter tomorrow. That is the point. You want control of your own life. That is the point. You want to avoid mistakes, to live with simplicity, to have abundant energy, to be youthful, to be free of pressure, to be unafraid. That is the point of it all, and you can have it all. Don't complicate things by thinking that there is any other point. There isn't. Be practical. See clearly and directly that the entire point is to have what you really want. As you read this book, stick to this single point. Then you will have what you really want. The power of doing nothing. I hope this doesn't sound like a silly question, said Norman E. But what should I do about a problem when I haven't the slightest idea of what to do? Why do anything at all? Well, don't we have to take action? The problem won't solve itself, will it? It will once you know the secret. Sometimes the correct action is no action at all. Inaction can be a creative process. It can lead to a surprising solution. For instance, instead of supplying an answer, it dissolves the very problem. You see, we're so anxious to do something about a problem. We don't like the tension and the suspense. We will do almost anything to settle the matter one way or another. But this leads to poor judgments and impulsive actions that only deepen the difficulty. Yes, I've seen that happen more than once. Work at not doing the things you usually do. If your habitual actions fail to clear the air, why continue with them? Strike out in an entirely new direction. That is, don't do the usual things that lead to the usually unhappy results. Give your mind a chance to clear itself. Don't be so eager to get a result. The answer is already within you, but you won't see it as long as you chase frantically around looking for it. It's like trying to recover a coin resting at the bottom of a pool. If you anxiously splash around, you cannot see it. But if you wait, if you remain alertly inactive, if you cease to stir the water, the coin will become visible. Then the very seeing of it is the same thing as its recovery. Could we call it the power of doing nothing? Yes. See the process as constructive inaction. Can you give a practical example of all this? Suppose a man has domestic problems. There are family quarrels that keep everyone unhappy. He becomes aware that his usual actions, perhaps attempts to dominate others, are useless. They only increase the difficulty. So he wisely stops using this wrong method. He drops it as inadequate. Now, the quietness produced by this not doing will give him clearer insight. He might see, for the first time, that it is far more important to have a happy home than to be a domestic dictator. All this is a major secret of this book. We must replace habitual action with fresh insight. By not doing the usual, we discover the unusual that clears our difficulties. Do not strive to seek the true, wrote a Zen teacher. Only cease to cherish opinions. This confirms a point covered in other pages. Freedom is a shedding process. We need only set aside the false opinions we have about ourselves and about the world in which we live. Then, having made room for truth, it comes. How to be a hero. Have you ever noticed the similarity between a detective novel and the mystery of life? The idea makes an interesting excursion. A detective story begins relatively peacefully. The stage is set, and the hero or heroine is brought on stage. You then meet various characters who revolve around the hero in major and minor roles. There are good and bad people. You meet characters whom you like and others whom you suspect of being other than they pretend to be. Trouble arrives. Someone gets a poisoned pen letter. A young woman is attacked on a lonely road. Strange sounds drift down from the attic. A fleeting figure is barely seen as it darts behind a statue in the dark garden. Someone screams. And somewhere, in the dim shadows, lurks the criminal behind it all. Sly and skillful, he possesses a high but evil intellect. When attacking the hero, his method is stealth and his purpose is destruction. He operates by boldness and bluff. For a while, the hero is confused but not disheartened. Because he gets tired of taking it, because he resolves to no longer live in fear, he goes into action. He rebels against his own complacency and directs all that rebellious energy against the lurking criminal. At first, the clues are meagre, but he persists. He tracks down clues, studies human nature, forces himself to strike out in new directions. The clues pay off. He recognises a familiar voice and locates a hidden room. Finally, the hero wins. The criminal is exposed. The novel ends happily. In life, the hero is the true self. The false self is the destructive criminal. In the novel, the hero always wins. In life, the true self can always win if it persists. A man wanting to solve his inner mysteries need only start with what few clues he has, or none at all. At the start of a mystery novel, you never ask the outcome. Likewise, in life, you need never wonder whether there exists a happy solution to your problems. It is there, if you only know it. If only you will plunge heroically after the clues. How to dissolve disappointments. The purpose of psycho-pictography is to empower you to think on a newer and higher level, to change your values and viewpoints, to cast aside unworkable ideas and to think from practical ones. This, whether one presently realises it or not, is what really changes everything wonderfully. So let's take a very common problem of life and see how Larry G changed his life by changing his thoughts. What, he asked, about the little daily disappointments that we all have? Can they be abolished? I have no overwhelming problems, just a series of little nagging ones. You know what I mean. Someone makes a promise and then breaks his word. I don't understand how a fresh viewpoint can cancel out disappointments, but I want to find out. All right, please follow. The fact is, someone breaks his promise to you. I assure you that it is not the bare fact of that broken promise that hurts. The disappointment comes when your mind adds something to that fact. The fact has no power to hurt you. It is your mental addition that does the damage. Please explain. He breaks his promise to you. That is the bare fact. It cannot hurt you in any way whatsoever, but your mind quickly adds something to the fact. For instance, you might think that he doesn't value you enough to keep his word, or you might suspect that he's trying to cheat you out of something. Again, you might indignantly think that there is just another instance of how unfair the world is to you. Larry, who had attended meetings, smiled and asked, "Is that the pride and vanity of the false self?" That is a very good observation. Your insight is growing. Yes, the false self demands a certain behaviour from others. When others don't agree, it becomes disappointed, even enraged. Of course, the person living in the false self hasn't the faintest idea of how he harms himself. Larry faithfully worked with the idea, see the bare fact but don't add to it. He found, of course, great changes and reported, there are no longer any disappointments, only events. You too can dissolve disappointments by not mentally adding to your daily events. Just as all the colours necessary for a beautiful painting are present in the artist's palette, so do you now possess everything needed for a wonderful life. You can become the skilled artist who paints a new life picture for himself. Such artistic ability is natural to you. Helpful points to remember. 1. The easy way is the right way. 2. Understanding is one of the greatest forces on earth. Build your understanding. 3. You can change into the kind of person you want to be. Let psychopictography aid you. 4. Review the enormously beneficial ideas about the true self and the false self. 5. Your true self knows all the answers you need. 6. Recognize your richness of natural energy. Get rid of strength-robbing negativities. 7. You are now a mental millionaire. 8. The point of your life is to live the way you really want to live. 9. Discover the marvellous technique of doing nothing. It is a surprising power for success. 10. Dissolve disappointments with the techniques applied in this chapter.